And welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise podcast. I'm Evan Marinofsky, joined today by the great Patrick Donnelly. Patrick, what's up?
Not much. It's a good time in the sports world right now. US Open started today. We love that. MIA baseball coming down to the wire. Big championship slate tomorrow. So we're recording this on Thursday. Big championship slate Friday and Saturday at Polar Park.
Ooh,
D1 championship. D1 championship. Not only is it two public schools, it's a number 8 and a number excuse me. It's a number 8 and a number 14 seed.
who? Who is it?
Braintree, who I think I had top 5 coming into the year, and they were in the top 10 all year. Huge injuries down the stretch. They are somehow making a run here, and Chelmsford, who's kind of like that in that next tier of teams.
Wow. All right, that's interesting. Feel like Braintree for hockey is always good. Chelmsford's always in the mix. So,
Chelmsford beat St. John Shrewsbury,
did they really?
the number 2 seed. Taunton was the number 1 seed. Taunton lost in the first round as the number 1
Are
seed.
they won games? Is it one game eliminations?
Yep.
I like that. That's what the MIA hockey playoffs. It's maximum chaos. You've got to win that one game or it's over. So I like that. I do like that the format because you were at U Lowell, their park on Wednesday night,
I
right?
was. Yep, I was. It's a nice ballpark, and it was a good game between Braintree and King Philip. I always think King Philip is a private school because it sounds like a private school, but
It
it's not.
does.
Um, yeah, no, it's a nice way they set it up because, like, I think it's like unless you are playing in a preliminary play-in game, the max games you like, I guess technically the max you could play is 6 if you're, making a run from that first round. But for most teams, the max games you're going to play is 5. And so the thinking is, all right, you start your ace game one, you got to have a 2 or at least like a bullpen game. It goes back to your ace, and by the time you get to Polar Park, your ace is back on the mound. I like how that's set up.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like in the MLB. How you're gonna
yeah, you got
schedule
to
your
manage it.
starter. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway,
We're not
go
here to talk
listen.
about baseball.
I would say go listen to the Baseball Journal podcast. I know you and Dan Guttenplan Planner doing a lot over there. But this past weekend, QMJHL draft, which around here we used to look at and
Yes.
go, ha, QMJHL draft. What does the Q draft mean? No one's going up there. It's like one kid every 10 years or whatever it is. Not the case anymore. CHL ruling happened last November. And now the CHL, which consists of the OHL, the WHL, and the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, which I did not know. I always thought it was Quebec Major Junior. And I know you texted me midway through last week, and you're like, "What is this Maritimes thing?" That's the name of it.
Well, we're not wrong because it changed like 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
like
Oh, I don't think
it's
we're
not.
wrong. We're never wrong.
Yeah. No, we're not wrong. We're just we're ignorant.
That's exactly it. We're kindly ignorant on that.
Yes.
But players can now go up there. Players can go play junior. There were already a handful that did this past year. I can guarantee you a lot are going to do it next year. And now a lot are have their rights up in the QMJHL because the draft was Friday and Saturday. 12 rounds. Friday was the first round at the Videotron Center in Quebec. I think it's in Quebec.
We
Exactly. We is right. We
we
were not there.
yeah.
But looked like a hell of an event. I mean, just from watching it, it looks they formatted it like the NHL draft. They have all the teams at their tables, they have the music, they got the lights. Robert Chalmers, who actually went, was telling me because I was like, oh, it didn't look like there were a lot of people. And he said, no, there was a whole side of just like fans. So I do wonder, like just kind of spitballing. I do wonder if other junior leagues like the USHL or the NAL or just any other junior league, I do wonder if they try to spice up their draft a little bit, specifically the USHL. I'm very curious to quote unquote compete with those um, Canadian junior leagues. And I don't know how the OHL or WHL, I don't know what their drafts look like, but the Qs was a spectacle. Kids did go up there. I wonder if the USHL maybe wants to do something similar.
Yeah. I mean, hey, your guess is as good as mine where this thing might be going. Like
That's the whole thing. Everyone's got an opinion on it. I
it's
do
like
wonder
a
about
it's
the
like a Cold
USHL.
War.
It
Yeah.
is. It is like a Cold War. I do wonder though if the USHL says, let's spice it up, but let's have one place host it. We'll do it somewhere cool or whatnot. But because now it's done. I believe it's mainly done online, and then you can watch the stream. Neutral Zone hosts the stream. And they run through the picks and things like that. But I do wonder if they try to put it in an arena, or somewhere like that. But we'll see. I don't think the USHL's announced any plans for that. The USHL is strong in its own right, so I don't think it has to worry too much about that. But Pat, there were some big takeaways this weekend. That's for sure.
There were some big takeaways. You kind of already touched on one of them is, a lot of New England kids went, and it's kind of bleeds into the bigger picture of, the ever-changing landscape. It seems like we talk about it every podcast. Will this become the norm?
It's a good question. I mean, 37 kids were picked, which is a lot. And going in, we didn't
Yes.
really know. You knew this was going to be a '09 heavy and like a good amount of '08s drafted. But then it was like, or '07 is going to get picked or '06 is going to get picked because they were on the list. And if you're on the QMJHL list, you're eligible to be drafted. So going into it, it's kind of like, all right, these older players are going to get drafted. And, Everett Baldwin as an '07 was picked. That was not a huge surprise. Second rounder to St. John. But like, in terms of if this is going to continue, I think a lot of it's going to dictate how many of these kids actually end up on their Q teams. And we might not know that next year because they're going to be kids who are drafted to the Q who go, hey, I'm going to go back to prep for another year. But, I'll probably go to your team the next year. And so I think we'll start to see that a couple years from now. The reality is, though, like, I do think this number stays around the same for the next at least year or two because it's one of the regions the Q has, right? Like it's Atlantic Canada, it's Quebec, and it's New England. So like, I think I did the percentages and like there were 197 New England names eligible to be drafted into the Q. Roughly 19% of listed New England names were selected. In terms of the draft, roughly 17% of players picked were from New England. So like, can New England hit 17% of the kids picked? Yeah, I think they can. Like, obviously, Quebec kids are going to have sort of the in. Atlantic Canada kids are also going to have a little bit more of an in. But, like, I think the Q is going to, especially the non-French speaking teams, I would imagine, start to send more scouts down here. We already saw it this past winter, so I think it's probably going to continue. And you're probably going to have the same number, if not more, kids selected going forward. So 17% to me seemed like the key number going forward.
Yeah, and that's not nothing either. That's like it's almost one in every five. That's
Yeah, good
really,
math.
yeah.
Man, who knew
Hey,
we had it in us?
college of optional math, baby. Um,
I always love that. That's a good acronym.
yeah. Hey, well, I mean, so yeah, 37 players, 197, one in five of 200 would be 40. There you go. Look at
Bingo.
us. Look at
Easy.
us.
Oh my God, too easy.
Then the other one you touched on a little bit already was just the birth years. '09 heavies and a good chunk of '08s. About I think it was like more than half were '09s. Little over a third were '08s. What did you make of this?
Yeah, this also wasn't a huge shock. It's funny, you look through and it's like 21 of the 37 were '09s, 14 of the 37 were '08s, and then there was 106, Nico Tornis, who absolutely destroyed the Null with the Danbury Junior hat tricks this past year. And I believe he was a first round pick of Sioux City in the USHL Phase 1 draft. So,
Sioux Falls.
again, Sioux Falls, excuse me.
Yeah.
And the good thing with that is like I think the Q took sort of a swing on him. Does he actually end up there? I don't know. Everett Baldwin in the second round as an '07. I don't think you should get used to that. I don't think you should get used to '08s next year potentially being picked in the second round, maybe later. But I think they knew that Baldwin was likely going to go to the Q next year. It's not official. Still could go to the USHL. But I think I would assume, like if I was, betting on it, I would put him in the queue. But so again, like I think going forward, you are going to see less of those older kids picked, and like next year it'll be mainly tens, and then a good amount of '09s that they missed on this year, and there were already we'll get to in a bit sort of some snubs. But I mean, you did see sort of again like Cam Manella an '09 early. Descosi is an '08, but like Brady Sloper's an '08. Galberto Beck, those are '09s. They're picked in the third round. Danya an '08, so it picked in the fourth. So I do wonder though, like if it. I mean, they did kind of go neck and neck. '09s and '08s picked in this draft for quite a bit early. So next year, could we see '09s picked in the second, third, fourth rounds? Yeah, I think absolutely. But in terms of '08s and '07s next year, I can't imagine that it's going to be a ton of that. I mean, it was what, like one in 12 and one in 15 of the '06s and '07s were picked this year. So I don't think, if you're an '08 who wasn't picked in this draft, I don't know if hoping next year's your year. I don't think that's feasible, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. One other thing this kind of speaks to too is like another thing we've talked about several times these last few podcasts is how just because of this and the junior, just all the changes, looks like prep's going to become younger, and this kind of backs it up. Where instead of your elder statesmen of next year being like the '07s getting picked, it's the '09s and taking more from that well.
Yeah, like I wonder about a Cam Manella at Brunswick. Like Cam Manella was picked in the second round of the USHL Phase One draft, second round of the Q draft, highly sought after puck moving offensive defenseman. What are the chances he goes back to Brunswick next year? I don't know. Like, but again, like you were picked in the two second rounds. I'd assume you have a USHL and a Q team who are hot on your tracks, who want you to come. Like, you know, does he go back to prep? Does he not? My guess, and this is literally just guessing, I would assume he goes to one of those junior spots. And you can do that with a lot of these players, like who were picked early in the Phase One draft, who were picked early in this Q draft as well. And I also like one thing I was kind of curious of was that were Q teams going to steer clear of kids picked early in USHL drafts of kind of like, oh, we don't really want to fight that battle, but they did and they didn't, which I found interesting. Like I think the Q is rightfully confident in themselves, and I think they want to have these recruiting battles. We'll get to, Quebec came out of left field for that pick in the first round. So like I do think these Q teams, and we'll get to this in a bit in recruiting with the USHL, are more than happy to go for it. So yeah, I mean I think you're gonna, just take any random '09, right? Who's drafted in the USHL and drafted in the Q. It's nice to feel wanted. And this summer, those teams are going to make those players feel wanted. And the reality is, a good amount of them are going to not cave, but are going to agree with those teams and go and not go back to prep. And the question will be how many kids end up back at prep if things don't work out. And the other one will be like, how many actually go to juniors? And does that dictate, is that a number that we see every year where it's like, oh my God, all these '09s who never would have left, or even all these '08s who never would have left before are now leaving? So I think that's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch this year. That's for sure.
And you just hinted at it. We kind of buried the lead, but I mean, maybe the biggest one of the weekend. And we were talking about baseball earlier. Talk about swinging for the fences. The Quebec Ramparts taking Carter Meyer in the first round. What's the thought there?
I think the thought is I think they traded up for that because they had three firsts. They picked James Scantlebury with I think the eighth or ninth pick, who's tendered by the Chicago Steel in the USHL. So I'd assume he goes to Chicago, but maybe he doesn't. Like maybe he does go to Quebec. And then at the end of the first round, it's like, screw it. Let's go for it. Let's swing for the fences. Again, like, do I think I mean, Carter Meyer's headed to the NTDP. Like, there's no question about that. There's no doubt. He's headed to Plymouth. There's a couple questions. Number one, how does that U17 year go? Right? If things don't go great or he doesn't like it there, you do have Quebec right there, who's going to be more than happy to open their doors to Carter Meyer, as they should be. So that's one. Does he, after his U18 year in NTDP, does he say, I want to do another year at junior, so I'm going to go to Quebec? Like, I can't imagine. That's the thing, right? Like, unless things didn't go well in that U18 year, and he says, you know what, I need another year at junior before I go to college. But again, like you know, I think he wants to go play college hockey. So like, I think he wants to do that immediately. And if he continues on this track, he'll just do 2 years of the NTDP and he'll be at wherever he ends up committing to. Which, like, again, we can do that a different episode on where we think those kids all end up. But nevertheless, like, it's a swing by Quebec. The chances of him ending up playing in Quebec are very, very small, but it'll always be there. And I guarantee you, Pat, next off season, I will have someone in a rink say to me, Carter Meyer, I'm hearing you might go to Quebec. I'm hearing, the NTDP, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think he might be playing for the Ramparts next season. And I'll go, okay, let me look into it. And so maybe that happens, but I don't ever foresee him doing that. But look, Quebec took a big swing. And if it did ever hit, like, that's a huge hit to get him at, what was it, like 17th? So
Yeah,
we'll see. But I can't, I think he's a 2 year NTDP kid and then he's off.
brother, if you think you're just going to be doing that only next summer, I got news for you.
Well, do you remember? This is interesting. I wanted to tweet this, but I'm like, I don't know if people are gonna get it. Remember the Lil Sass sketch of like when the Detroit Lions drafted him?
And he's got the corona. He's like
And he's
pointing
like
at
pointing at
himself.
himself. I feel like that
I
was Carter
love that.
Meyer. That was Carter
Yeah,
Meyer on Friday night being like, me? You picked
yeah.
me at 17? Well, I love that. Like the idea
I
of him
use that. I
just
use that meme all the time in my group chats.
oh, it's great. It's
Yeah.
undefeated. And I just love the idea of him, like, maybe he wasn't even, I don't know if he was watching or not, but just the idea of him being like, why are my friends, like, who picked me?
Who's
What,
texting me? Like,
what happened?
what's this
So,
French phone message I just got here?
yeah, what's this plus, whatever? And what's funny is, like, Robert Chalmers sent me a video of when Carter Meyer got drafted, and, like, the whole place was like, what?
Huh?
And again, like, if Carter Meyer wasn't going to the program, it'd be like the number one overall pick. So it's not like he's like, not, it's not because of talent that he'd be low in that first round. It's because he's going to the program. But it hits at a bigger thing of like, does a place like Quebec say we're going to take the NTDP head on? We're going to fight tooth and nail for this kid, and we're going to be a thorn in the NTDP side. We're going to recruit this kid hard, like and again, then they take Sam Pandolfo in the fourth round, and they couldn't complete it with Finn Sears, but like them taking Pandolfo later shows you that they are serious. Where it's like we know these two kids are best friends, they're a package deal, and so I do wonder like when they drafted Pandolfo, I was like, all right, they are, outside of the fact they also drafted Meyer in the first round, but drafting Pandolfo then in the fourth, who also is not likely to go there, they're serious about it. They want it to happen. So we'll see.
Well, I'm sure they'd love to, have Carter Meyer among their notable alumni someday. If you'd like to, like, hear the company he could be in. If just we're spitballing.
That's right.
We're just having fun here.
Just having fun.
So, like modern day, you got like Nikita Kucherov, Alex Radulov, Jonathan Marchessault, Antoine Vermette, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, Simone Gagne. Um, Pretty good names there. Pretty
What is
good
this
company.
for?
The Quebec Ramparts. They're alumni.
Oh, yeah. Am I crazy? I believe Simone Gagne is the GM of Quebec. I think. I'm looking this up right now because I don't want to have this wrong. Yes, he is GM
Oh,
of the
he
Quebec
is.
Ramparts. He took over for Patrick Roy. And do you know who Simone Gagne played with in his NHL career? Freddie Meyer. So again, I think maybe there's a little like, hey, we try to do this or whatever, in terms of like getting Carter Meyer to come up and play. But
Yeah,
I can't imagine that he goes at least now. Like he's going to Plymouth. So
yeah,
that's that.
yeah.
Do you want to skate fast? For 50 years, Laura Stam instructors have taught youth players to pros how to skate correctly, powerfully, and fast. Players who attend Laura Stam power skating programs learn how to skate fast by learning how to execute every maneuver in hockey. They become powerful, stable, efficient, and explosively fast skaters. If you can't wait for a clinic, join our subscription skills video service, and we'll show you the skills taught at our clinics in an easy-to-use video format with training plans to guide your training. Register or subscribe now at laurastam.com. That's LauraStamm.com. You can learn to skate fast.
Moving on, there were a lot more, interesting picks outside of Carter Meyer, and some pretty good value finds, as you wrote. Noah Saverlis being one of them. What did you make of him getting picked, and other potential, good values here in this draft?
Yeah, Servillis I thought was picked later than I would have expected in the fifth round. To me, he seems like a sort of top 3 round guy. Um, Kovaluzzi in the fifth makes sense. Goalies like with Justin Lee, goalies are hard to sort of figure out. Brody Berard's an interesting one because he was a second round pick out of for Youngstown in the phase one draft. There's a kid who, I felt was kind of a snub for the national team's evaluation camp. Getting him in the sixth, like again, if Halifax could convince him to come up, that's a great value find in the sixth round of middle of a 12 round draft. Um, and again, like I look at a Cooper Campbell. So Cooper Campbell gets picked by Drummondville in the sixth. He's someone he just made select camp. Stocks high, 6'3", reliable defenseman. Like, yeah, and he's not even picked in the USHL. Wasn't picked in the phase one draft last year or phase two this year. So, like for Drummondville, that's an awesome value get of like, well, no one else has the rights to this kid. So Cooper Campbell to me is a really good example of one. You get like further along in the draft. Stephen Panette, I was glad to see him get picked. Hillside kid. He had a really good festival, made select 16s, an 09, so I liked him. Gatineau takes a chance on Jake Boganicki in the ninth round. Again, kind of goes hand in hand with the national team kids. I can't imagine he ends up there. But then, like to me, 10th round is all about value. Gatineau takes David Bosco in the 10th, which again, like is low. I know Bosco was a high pick in the phase one draft last year. I think it was like a second rounder to Cedar Rapids, played a game there last year. Maybe they feel like maybe the feeling around the Q was he's not going there, but from what I know, he's very much considering the Q. So again, getting him in the 10th is a great play by Gatineau. Caden Pellegrino in the 10th to Cape Breton. Pellegrino, yeah, he's a little undersized, but one of the best playmakers in the region by far. So again, like getting him in the 10th, I thought Caden Pellegrino was going to go much earlier. But again, who knows? But again, good for Cape Breton for getting him in the 10th. And then Owen McHale. I've liked Owen McHale a lot the last couple months, just a force. We talked a little bit about him with the festival podcast, like just a crap star, but he was also now producing. So it's just that
A real
perfect
Charlestown
blend.
kid.
Yes, Charlestown kid. It's so refreshing to see some toughness. I like it. So again, getting him in the 10th, like that's I don't believe he was picked in either USHL draft the past 2 years. Forgive me if I think I'm correct on that. Chicoutimi picks him in the queue. So like great get. I imagine he's back though at Dexter next year. And so again, and then I love like Chris Soja picked in the 12th, I think is a really nice get. And Gavin Callahan picked by Drummondville as well there in the end of the draft. So those are my value picks. It's hard to tell, right, Pat? Because like some of these kids, your second round pick might never show up. Your 11th round pick shows up and he's great. So it's hard to tell with these drafts. I think it's a little overrated when you're like first round pick's a first round pick in anything, but you get into the second, third, fourth, you get on with the draft. It doesn't really matter where these kids are picked as much. I do wonder though, like if teams in the queue who've picked kids higher than their USHL team picked them say like, "Hey, we wanted you more, we picked you higher."
Yep.
If that starts to kick in. But yeah, those are my little value adds.
You've mentioned this word a couple times already. Snubs. Let's get to some kids you thought should have been picked and weren't. I know there's a handful you wrote about you were really surprised about, Chase Warsofsky being one of them. What are your thoughts here?
He was my biggest. I thought Warsofsky was like a lock to get picked. I like his game. Obviously, a good play driving center, skilled, fast. I don't know why he wasn't picked. I know that he missed part of the Cushing season. His numbers from prep weren't like insane, but I also think like anyone who's watched him would kind of go, well, that doesn't really matter that much given his abilities. So I was shocked he wasn't. Keeping it with 09s, like I thought Preston Abbott had a real case to be picked as like a sort of low in the draft puck moving left shot defenseman that you're sort of investing in for the future. And then Alex Wang in net, I think he was the top goalie at select 15s last year. I thought he would have had a real case. He didn't. Goalies are tough though, so like it's hard to like an 09 goalie is a snub. That kid's 15 years old. Like that's a hard like goalies are hard to pick in any draft, but especially junior hockey drafts. I had one with the 08s, Will Mancuso. I thought Will Mancuso should have absolutely been picked. He wasn't. Again, does a team try to sign him or not sign him, excuse me, get his rights after next year? I believe he's going back to St. Mark's. So I wonder how I'm assuming teams are going to be on him this coming season. And then there weren't any really with the 07s, just because like, and even the 06s because you knew the chances were low anyway. But if there was any one player, I'd go with Kyle O'Leary. He was a late pick or a relatively late pick in the phase two draft this year. And I just think he's a force and a power forward and a guy you want on your team. Maybe a team wants to sign him now. Like that could absolutely be the case. Yale commit. But Kyle O'Leary would be like my one of like the older kids, so to speak. So not a ton of subs. You always come out of these drafts like, oh, how did this, this kid or this kid? There wasn't a ton of that. It was more so kind of surprised at how the draft went. And I'd say like Warsofsky was my biggest overall snub.
Yeah, and we've kind of touched on the NTDP thing already a little bit. Just with the Carter Meyer conversation, you touched on Jake Boganicki real quick. Any leftover thoughts on sort of that rabbit hole, whether it's competition between the Q and the program or whatnot?
You do wonder about that. The NTDP, to my knowledge, does not offer money at all. Whereas in the Q, you have stipends and you have family travel and those types of things. And you do wonder if how hard the Q uses that as leverage. Now, those four kids are going to the program, like no doubt. But you do wonder after that U17 year, not those four kids, but other kids who were drafted into the OHL or wherever or the Dub, like are they leaving after their U17 year to go do something different? Are they going to go try it out? I think that's going to be the interesting part and how involved those Q teams are in getting those kids. Because again, like Quebec used a first on Carter Meyer, a first over a kid who would likely go there. They picked Carter. They picked Sam Pandolfo later. St. John picked Finn Sears. And obviously with Boganicki, you have Gatineau picking him. So like, I think Gatineau's more taking a flyer later in the draft. That makes sense. St. John, I do wonder, like, because again, was Quebec trying to get Finn Sears as well? I don't know. That would have been a heck of a play if they did. But, again, St. John gets in their way. So, I think you're going to see that a lot. You're going to see it with even the USHL of trying to, get their way in there a bit in trying to get these kids, before they try out for the national team. So we'll see. But I can't. These four kids are going to go to Plymouth.
And we'll wrap up on something we alluded to earlier, like kind of with the draft conversation and kind of dovetails with the NTDP stuff. Where does the USHL stand in all of this? What's that recruiting battle like?
I think you're going to see it. Like you're really going to see it. I mentioned Manella. That's a perfect example because he has, he's a second round pick in both drafts. And then you look at some other players we haven't mentioned. You have Brady Sloper picked in the second round by Charlottetown, which is awesome for Sloper. Like there's a kid who's worked hard. And you also have like Paulo Galberto, a third round pick to Halifax, Kurt Beck, third round pick to Sherbrooke, Donya, fourth round pick to Sherbrooke. I believe all those kids are picked in the USHL as well. That's a battle. Like you got a battle to get those kids, not to mention that does Donya go back to Groton? Kurt Beck is supposed to go back to Arlington High School. So you have all these battles. Like, are you going back to your prep school? Okay, no, you come to us at Sherbrooke. No, come to us at Youngstown. You're going to have all of that. So it is going to be a hot battle, but I also think an agent said this to me. There are going to be wins and losses everywhere. It's not going to be like the USHL is dominating the Q, and it's not going to be the Q is going to dominate the USHL. They're going to be, leagues are going to get certain players. The other league's going to get others. To me, that's my biggest thing. It's also what you're a fit for. The USHL is the premier junior league. It's hard. It's cutthroat. The Q, I don't believe is at that level. The Q's really great hockey, but it's not quite the USHL. So if you're sort of in that limbo of I've outgrown prep, but I'm not sure about the USHL, let's go to the Q. And I think that's where you'll see it. Where, maybe your Nico Torneses, I'd assume go to the USHL. But we'll see. And that's the fun thing. It's an open canvas. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. And that's what makes it so interesting. And that's what made this draft so interesting was how many are actually going to get picked? And then now the next question is who's going? And the camps, I believe, happen at the end of the summer for these Q teams, whereas USHL camps are happening right now. So we'll see. We'll keep you updated. Keep you updated on all that.
Well, I mean, you said it. That's what makes it so interesting. And like, and we'll keep saying it how this constantly keeps changing, and like we're learning at the same time everybody else is
Yeah.
learning.
It's a
Like,
funny thing. Like you talk,
like
yeah, like you talk to hockey people, agents or coaches, everybody's like, yeah, we're learning too. And Pat, you and I, we're learning too. And that's the funny part is like, I think everyone's kind of like, you know, got blindfolds on in a jungle, just kind of feeling around. And I think a lot of players right now are doing that, where it's like, you're trying to figure out what to do next. It's not easy.
it's like that flip from the end of the office where they just get like the finger guns like
Yeah, pointing at each other. You got like
yeah
John Missouri at Arlington High School pointing his guns at, like the Q coach and
at
the
Moncton
USHL
and
coach. Yeah, like Kurt, you're not taking Kurt Bet from me. Everybody's shooting each other. Like, yeah, that is, I think, what you could see happening. And it's who can make the best pitches. Because again, Pat, it's nice to feel wanted. And if a place pushes hard enough, it's easy to be convinced to go to that place. So I think you're gonna see a lot of that going forward. I
yeah.
think we touched on everything.
We did. A lot to unpack there, a lot to, keep track of going forward. You have all of it up on the website already. You have your takeaways, you have a full list of everybody drafted. You have a quick article on Carter Meyer and sort of your quick hit takeaways there, and more to come.
Damn right. That's right. And Pat has a lot coming in terms of girls hockey this summer, different leagues, different look aheads, I believe some tournaments as well. So beyond that. And we have a lot coming during the summer. I always am like, man, what are we going to do in the summer? And then it's like, oh, we ran 2 stories on Thursday or something. It's like, whoa, 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 slow it down. So we have a lot coming. We'll have more podcasts coming as well. And that's RinkWise. That's Patrick Donnelly. I'm Evan Marinofsky. We will see you at the rinks.